Excellent. Welcome on back, Hamen.
Hey,
We're here again.
yes, excited. We're gonna tackle really a strong topic.
It is. It is. So I know we've got a lot of good feedback so far from some of the previous episodes as we've been kind of working our way through this profit-focused series on the podcast over the last several weeks. And from recollection, what we're going to be talking about today is going to be average order value, is that next stage inside of this sequence. I know we discussed a little bit earlier, and so this is a really like broad and probably complex, maybe in some ways, subject that could, you know, really go into a lot of different details. So I think we discussed and kind of agreed we're going to keep this like somewhat like on platform and then keep our session on email marketing and post purchase and everything campaign related after the fact in the next up and coming kind of episode as well.
Yes. So yeah,
Excellent.
sorry, go ahead.
So why is it so important for us to focus on the average order value as part of this, profit focused series? What's the specific kind of relevance of this overall?
Yes, absolutely. So just to recap a little bit some things we talked about last time, just to make sure that it's clear into our pricing, because we mentioned that in the conversion rate in an opposite manner on how you can lower your prices and kind of focus on increasing your conversion rate by using that as a tool to increase a little bit the conversions. Right now, I'm thinking about it as, you have it, it can go both ways. So you can actually push the price up and try to kind of absorb your cost per acquisition, which is another strategy. Now, pricing is so important in a business because it's kind of the power you have in the market if you're coming into a
Mm.
market. And that's why I think we should kind of look at both ways. Lowering the price is a strong strategy to get a better conversion rate, but also increasing the price is another strategy to dominate in the market. So I think it's going to be a very
Mm.
exciting topic.
Yeah, I mean that was the first thing that I kind of wrote down in terms of like I guess I think about average order value and I'm like that is essentially like one of the most important numbers. Obviously, assuming we've got traffic and it's coming through and it's like within KPI, it's working well. And then you've done some repairs and you've fixed up your kind of landing pages and you've really improved the quality of maybe your images. Your numbers are looking better and better. The add to cart rates right through to the reach checkout right through to the conversion rate. Everything there's looking good. And so this is the way I think about this is like once you reach this stage, you've like optimized the ads are looking good, and I think you probably, whether people like to believe it or not, you probably always need to be focusing on the ads because they tend to fatigue the most out of any other kind of medium or platform. But assuming your ads are working quite well and your landing page is converting at an above kind of industry KPI, the way I think about this is like you're almost wanting to increase your average order value and by extension your profit to the point where it begins to go back and almost like somewhat break all the stuff that you've just done. You know what I mean? It's like we're reaching the tipping point where the market starts to disagree with the price that I'm charging, or it starts to disagree with like what I'm paying per order because it starts to get almost like too expensive. And I think that's how I think about this next stage in
Yeah.
terms of like average order value, increasing average order value, price, hikes in terms of increasing the price. What's your thoughts on like the overarching kind of structure as far as like what we're doing at the moment?
It's like I think the same way. So think about it as if let's say we did that first step, we lowered the price, you have a good conversion rate, everything is looking good, then your goal would be what is actually like kind of the price elasticity? So how much can I push to the point where your customers are like, no, this is too much? And
Mm,
ideally, you can kind of always work on the value to keep pushing the price. Because in reality, if I was to charge three times the price, but I have something that's more valuable in the way I'm advertising it to my product, then I can actually push more. Now, how I look at it is probably like two things. We can start by analyzing like pretty much how to implement this strategy, which in my opinion I would probably think about mostly like in that first stage, the pre-purchase and post-purchase kind of as a way to push the AOV a little bit higher while you can start actually increasing the prices. So I think about the funnel. If I was getting to say 5% conversion rate, my goal would be how can I introduce, let's say, something like maybe the same product twice, maybe something just like in that process to increase a little bit my margins. And if it's really looking good, then I can start looking at, hey, let's actually maybe increase a little bit the price and see how the add to cart is, reactive to that. So that's kind of my view
mm,
on it. So first, things that are not necessarily directly changing the price to push a little bit the margins, and then increasing the price when I'm at that phase that's optimized, as you mentioned. Do you think the same
Mm,
way? We start with that and then increase
interesting.
the price,
So,
or you just
so
increase
what
the
you're
price?
saying is, so you will, for example, look to rather, so assuming we've got good ads, we've got good conversion, things are working really well through the whole funnel, and then now we're looking to increase profit per unit. We're on that kind of average order value. You would focus on adding like a post-purchase upsell, like one click, something of that nature first before introducing, for example, starting to increase the price. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes, because you still have a good conversion rate. So I would start with kind of optimizing everything, like I would say to a certain extent in terms of your post-purchase experience, in terms of like what they see right away and pre-purchase.
Mm,
And once the price is, let's say, when I see that margin is kind of that's the level where I'm at, I'll be like, okay, now I'm going to be looking at, increasing the price right away in terms of like a little bit and see how your audience would react. So this is one strategy. Obviously, you can do it the other way, which also makes sense. You can start with, hey, I'll increase a little bit the price up until that moment where I see that basically the add to cart just dropping. People are not adding to cart anymore. And that's when you start looking at, as you mentioned, two things. Something is kind of like I got to that point where we're at the limit of your audience, what are they accepting with what you're showing? It's keep in mind, it's what you're
correct.
showing. It's not technically
Correct.
the ultimate price. So your goal would be either can I improve the perceived value and then look
Mm,
at the add to cart and kind of optimize from there, or maybe decrease a little bit the price, come back to that, let's say, previous step and you really optimize. So that's my view on it. But I think
mm.
you're aligned on that, correct? In terms of strategy,
Yeah,
increasing both ways.
definitely aligned on that. I guess the way I think about it is like, so I would want to, and the only reason that I would think about it from this perspective is like when you introduce something additional to the system, for example, like the post-purchase upsell or pre-purchase upsell, it creates more complexity and it creates more kind of like, variances in the system overall. Like if you think about the funnel and there's like, we've got the funnel working, this, ads are good, funnel's good, conversion is good, things are working. And then so the only variable that I'm experimenting with or testing like is really going to be like, all right, now the way I think about it is like, let's push as much traffic at the cheapest possible price on the front end. Once I've fixed that initial first KPI, next KPI, let's get as high conversion rate as possible. So all that traffic is converting. And then my next focus, like the way I would think about it would be like, and the way I'm thinking about this is I want to squeeze and exhaust any form of like resource that I have in the ads. I'm like, let's wring the ads dry. Let's do as best as I can to just wring this thing and squeeze that towel. There's no juice left. Next stage, let's squeeze everything out of this freaking conversion rate. Let's get it up to the highest level. Third stage, let's wring as much as I can out of the price initially without any further complexities or any further complications or new things, but just pure like price-based efficiency through conversion rate optimization, images, all those types of things, and just getting that to the point where it starts to tip. And then I go, now let's add something new on the back end to
Sure.
capture that drop off. That's how I
And
think.
and what would you think about, let's say I'm like running a store right now and I have, let's say, like a price that I like did like last time, I like 10% less than the market, and I'm thinking
Sure.
about increasing it. Should I come back to the regular price, like the average price in the market, or just push a little bit? Like what's the, I would say, push in pricing that I would do if I was looking to increase the price? Do you have like a specific target, like come back to the market and then gradually increase, or just bump like $100? Like what's kind of,
Oh
let's say,
yeah.
the on that?
Yeah. No, so I actually did this exact strategy with Basu when we first were really starting to get some form of like traction with this brand. Like it was struggling for a while. We couldn't get the ads to kind of like convert at the level we needed to. It was back and forth. We were testing different creatives. It was very, very, very challenging. And it wasn't profitable for a number of months. And so what we did was exactly the same strategy that I talk about myself all the time. I'm like, we'll bring that price right down to the point where it's like break even at 10% profit. And we're like, okay, so let's see if we can get it here. Because right now, price is not a problem, right? Like people,
To remove
we're
that
below,
elimination.
we've eliminated, we're certainly the cheapest in the market, which is
For
not really,
sure, no doubt.
it's not where you want to be, but it's like, it's a great place to test because then if it's like, if we rule out the most powerful kind of like decision-making criteria that people actually base their decisions on, then it must be something with like my creatives or my website or something fundamentally broken. And so we wound that price down from like $30 down to $19.99. And we started to get conversion, and we were like exactly where we thought we would be, losing a little bit of money, break even, losing a little bit of money, break even, exactly as I expected. But it was getting that consistent kind of like rhythm. And what we then started to do as we started to get the creative dialed in, more and more signals from the, store back through into the pixel, everything started to fire and come together. And the main tipping point that we actually introduced into that brand that made such a big difference was very, very interesting. So, and we can probably talk about this a little bit more, maybe not in this specific episode, but I think a whole entire episode on like offer creation would be really, really valuable. So what we did is we had a product on the store, which was the lingerie wash bag, like where you would put the cloth into and put it into, the washing machine so it wouldn't damage the cloth. And so initially we sold those products on the site for $9.99. And all we did, and I think they were like something like maybe 40 cents or 30 cents to manufacture. So really kind of low cogs. And so all we did was just like add that in free wash bag with every single purchase, right? And so it didn't really do much to the overall kind of unit economics too much. That was a real initial kind of like kickstart that started that motion and really started to move the whole business forward. And then from that point at that break even, it was like every 4 days, we just added $2 to the price. And it
So
was
you
just
gradually, like every time you
$2.
add $2, and do you like this is like really good. Like I'm like when I look at this strategy that you did, pretty much you introduced like at the lower price another item that's for free, that's not costing you much, and the perceived value probably just went much higher. And then you're like, hey, that's the right time to start pushing a little bit the price in the same time. So it
Yep.
kind of
Yep.
compensated on that element of lowering the price and then increasing it. Now, when
Correct.
you started doing the $2, did you like kind of kept doing it up until you saw the add to cart rate going down, or you just, there was
Yeah.
like a level where you wanted in the market, like this is profitable, let's just keep it at 30%? Because I've been
Yeah, very
surprised by one thing.
interestingly, such a good question, and this is green light permission for all of the founders and people listening that get really scared of raising your price. Like you should raise your prices, and it should be scary, and you should worry about losing customers, and you should be like, oh my God, this is freaky. But you just do it, and then you're like, oh, like nothing changed. And so with Pursue there, we gradually over a series of I think it was like probably 10 days, around about 10 days, maybe 20 days, we started, increasing the price, and it was like $2, fine, $2, fine, $2, fine. And then we got to 30, and then it was like, fine, perfect. Went to 32. And I kind of liken it to um, the temperature at which ice freezes, right? And so, water can
Interesting.
water can get down to like, I think it's like 1 degree, and the moment it switches over to zero, it's like and it freezes. And it's just that one moment. It was very interesting to watch because the business overall performance was really strong, really consistent. It was $2, zero change. Went straight to the bottom line profit, $2. And the thing is, like, people listening might be like, yeah, $2, like that's nothing. The first $2 was 10%. Like
Yes.
we were at $20 and we added 10% net straight to the bottom line. And then we added
Yes.
another almost 10% and another and another. So we substantially changed the overall, profit profile just through this exercise. But it was so interesting because we got to 30 and then we went to 32 and it was like just tank. It was just
That's
immediate disagreement. And it was so interesting because I've never seen such a kind of reaction like that. And so we wound it back to the 30. I
mhm.
always think it was like 29.99, which is what it is, I believe now. And it was just straight back up again. And so we kind of found that sweet spot moment through that testing. And I really think, like, similar to what I was mentioning earlier there in terms of like, so we want to repeat that same process through the ads, right? So it's like, how can I squeeze the ads? How can I squeeze a conversion? And then how can I take that conversion and then squeeze the conversion as much as physically possible, exactly what we did on Bisu, to the point where the conversion breaks and the conversion goes from 8 to like 3 in one day. And I'm like, oh, okay. So people have now reached their maximum that they're willing to pay. Now we go into the next layer and we go, let's add an upsell, a downsell, some form of post-purchase mechanism to continue that life cycle. That's the way I thought about
Cheers.
it.
This is really like I think when you look at others that are running right now their stores and they're struggling with the pricing, they really have that fear of doing what you just mentioned, increasing the
Mm,
price a little bit, because either they increase it and they see the like kind of like positive effect and they want to keep it for a while, so just one time and they're just like, hey, I don't want to do it anymore, or they're actually just increasing it, but not enough, like just like 50 cents, like, hey,
Correct.
I'm done. So I'm thinking about overall like this pursuit, like you kind of pushing and looking for more and more profit from the market rather than just settling for what you have right now. It's really, really, really
Yep.
good, I think, strategy to always look at how can you increase the price. Is there a way where you look at pretty much like like instead of increasing like the way you did, like just pushing much higher price and adding, let's say, another product or something, or you think about it more of we start with one and then just adapt it instead of adding in
Mm,
more items? Because you did add the like you introduce technically a gift and then you push the
correct.
price. Is that the strategy, or it's more of just this was one case outside of
Well,
that
we've
strategy?
done something very similar with the Oz Fishing brand as well, in terms of we've played around a lot with like price flexibility on that brand as well, and brought the price right down when we've had some like challenges with conversion to see if the price was an issue. The price didn't seem to have any impact on the conversion, and so we did the same thing. We gradually, without any changes to the product offering or the structure or any free gifts or anything, we just gradually started to increase the price back up again, and the same kind of situation kind of ensued. So I think that like, overall, if I was looking at the example or the scenario that we were talking about there in terms of, okay, we've launched a new brand, I've brought my price right down, and I'm starting to get traction, and I'm breaking even, maybe I'm losing money, right? And that's my current situation. It's like, okay, this kind of hurts. I don't really like it. It's okay because I'm getting data and things are working. At least I'm making sales, right? But then it's like I need to then start to win back some of the money that I'm, pouring out of my business through the burn. And so that's when I would just start to increase the price. And I don't think necessarily you need to add a new product, or it's like essential to add a new product. I really would recommend just, and the thing about it as well is if you think about like, you know, $1, $2, right? As a percentage of like your average order value, it might be like 3% or four.
Yes.
It's a substantial amount,
It's really like
thousands of
you're adding like
units.
so much profit to your business by just increasing a little bit the price. Now,
Correct.
my view on this is like just a little bit looking at, I'm always thinking about the person that's starting out and they did, like I say, everything is looking good. So technically, strategy wise, you're launching, you have a good conversion rate, you should look at increasing the price like almost all the time. But is there like a, let's say you mentioned that point that like that level you reach with Bisu where everything was kind of, hey, this is a limit, right? When you reach that, is there a way like to push more above this, like by working on the marketing, or just
Mm.
like we keep it at this level and that's good? And what do you do in terms of just that overall, let's say, view on pushing more in terms of pricing?
I mean, like similar to what I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier as well, in terms of like, so I think in order to continue increasing price, like you need to have some form of demonstration of like justification of value. So why is it that you can, say for example, we got stuck at the $30 mark, and let's just assume I went crazy and I was like, I want to charge $70, right? Like, so how am I
Double,
able to,
triple.
right, so how am I able to justify that, and what's the kind of like value proposition? Because I guess even thinking about this, and I think this is really important for all founders to think about, is like, so when you're in that situation and you're kind of like competing with competitors, and obviously with, for example, that Basu business, the other competition, they're very around that similar price. And so the market, they know and understand, they've seen the competitors, they know their product, they know our product, they're aware of the differences. They use our product $30, they use their product 33, similar, right? And so like in terms of like even the mind and psychology behind it, it's like you need to either really love that brand or have some like absolute affinity with that company to continue being a customer. Um, or you need to go way above to be like very different, because otherwise it's like, well, we're kind of the same and our price dictates. You run the risk of, I guess, running into kind of the commodity trap, right? Because you look the same as the other companies, you're priced around about the same as the other companies. You're competing with like more aggressive marketing, more aggressive offers, pricing that's kind of the same. Like it puts you in a hard position, And so I think trying to push your value up in terms of what you do, I guess, more strong and define kind of unique mechanisms or unique selling propositions in terms of how you actually position the brand itself or position the product itself. Reviews, testimonies, like influencers, big kind of like promotion celebrities that can position your brand further and further. I think some of these things would like necessitate higher prices as well. But overall, it can be a bit of a challenging situation when you get yourself into almost like an equal price match where it's like my price is 30, yours is 31. We kind of sell the same product.
So
Consumers
it's
are going
kind
to
of like
go,
when Amazon, like it feels like,
exactly,
so we're
exactly. So
competing on price.
yeah, precisely. What's your thoughts on that overall?
I actually, I really don't like to compete on price. Like any person that would
Yeah.
tell me, "Hey, my differentiation is my price," I'm like, no, that
Mm,
should not be the case. You're kind of telling me
agree.
you want to start, to compete with really like a big disadvantage. It doesn't make sense. So the focus would be, how can you charge more by default? Like, how can I charge more? So let's like be clear on that. I want to charge more. I don't want to charge less. But as you mentioned, you can't really like, I would avoid being in that middle level. So you're looking at either pricing much higher or really going, it's kind of my view, or kind of going down. So you don't want to stay in the, I would say, middle level. So I would look at
Mm,
either I'm really
correct.
aggressively lower, or I'm going to be tackling like a higher end. And that's going to be
Correct.
my view in terms of positioning. Now, overall, as you mentioned, this is powerful. Like when you're running ads and you're thinking, hey, I have this offer right now. I can absorb, let's say, a certain acquisition cost. If I was to really increase my price, I can actually be profitable even if I'm breaking even right now. If my conversion would remain the same, I can really make more profit just by doing this change. And I've seen cases where e-commerce sellers, and this is very, very much like, I would say I see this all the time in the market. They define the price, they just pick the price that makes sense. Like, hey, this is a good price. I think it's a good price.
Yeah.
And then they're kind of convinced, and they're like, hey, I don't want to change it. And then you look at the margins, it just doesn't make sense. Like you don't even
Yeah.
have 30%. And this is what I
Yeah.
think that in the program we have, it's very clear you need to maintain these KPIs. Like these are the numbers, like for you to actually be profitable. If you don't
Agreed.
program the outcomes, they're not going to happen. Like you need to have the inputs, otherwise
Yeah.
it's not going to happen. So that's my view in
And
terms
the
of
interesting
pricing.
thing I just want to add to that is I think that there's also like there's kind and maybe this is a very much an Australian thing, perhaps more than like United States or people in different countries. But I definitely know in Australia there's a strong sense of like fairness. Like I want to make money, but I don't want to make too much money. You know what I mean?
Good. Like I just want a little bit.
Right. And so it's like, no, 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 I really want to get wealthy, but no, no, that seems like a little bit too much of a margin. That seems like, and so
Yes.
like when you're in, especially when you're in those earlier stages, like it's like you need to protect and fight as much as possible to keep those kinds of margins as high as you
Yes.
can. And it's
Yes.
like, do you think that like Optus or, any of these companies that pay a few cents on the dollar to have you connected on the phone line care about charging you $200 a month for your subscription? It's like,
Yes, they're gonna, it's business, and that's also something I've seen sometimes with a person like starting out, like, hey, I would probably not pay for it at this price, but you're not the avatar, so you're thinking
mm,
about it from just the business like perspective. I don't think I'll pay for, let's say, this makeup brush $50. Probably I would not,
yeah.
but if I was the avatar, yes, if you put in the right ingredients. So it's
Mm,
always about thinking about in the market, you potentially you think about that stadium that, let's say we have, like if the market was a stadium and you have a row, like that's that VIP section, that's what you want to
yes,
target in terms of your pricing. And I think
exactly.
that's my view on the market. So it's really, you need to
Mm,
look at how can I connect with that audience in terms of benefit and value so that they can buy at this price that I want.
mm,
And ideally it's a higher one.
yeah.
That's kind of my view on the pricing. Now,
Mm,
one element that I actually was looking at in terms of just overall the pricing and how you can increase the price, would you consider that it's like a overall better to be in the luxury level rather than, let's say, on the kind of lower side in terms of like low ticket items? Like what is that? I would say if I'm still doing product research, what would be a level, let's say, that you would target in general, like in terms of pricing? Let's say I have all the market, I'm thinking about pricing. I'm gonna pick a product that's a little bit more expensive or a product that's a little bit cheaper. So what's your view on
mm.
that overall?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, if you think about it, like the challenge, and if you look at like, I've got a book on my shelf right behind me that Made in America by Sam Walton, right? And so the way that he was able to, build Walmart to have such competitive low prices is because he did it with volume. And so the nature of you entering into like a super low price market is you must be able to do tremendous volume. Like that's the
Yes.
only play that you have, is if you just outsell everybody else and you have tremendous amounts of cash and you can just like support growth and burn to acquire all the customers, then increase your prices and then win, right? And so like
Mhm.
that strategy works, but again, it's like you can do it, but it's like it's a fight, right? And it's also like it's much, much, much harder. And I think something that I always like speak to a lot about in terms of like with any of my private clients is like, especially when you're starting, especially when you're an early stage business, you want to be able to have as profitable of a business as possible. Like that, you should optimize and fight and claw tooth and nail, to really, really increase your margins and have as much profit there as possible, because the profit is what allows you to have extra thinking time. It allows you to, plan better, allocate resources better, reinvest into your company. Like there's so many things that come out of it. And so when you're sitting there and looking to optimize for low prices, it's a fight you don't want to win. And then thing is
It's
as
like
well, it's like it's a fight that um, companies like Temu, companies like these massive Chinese retailers, they will beat you at, right?
yes, it's like you can't
They
compete with
you
AliExpress.
aren't going to win. Like you're just not going to win. I guarantee you're not going to win. So it's like, and the other part of it as well is it's like you would always prefer to have less customers but more valuable customers, as
Yep.
opposed to seas of customers that are worth a little bit and they're all just like not really profitable for you, but
Yes.
you're just having to deal with all of their problems. So very much the same position. I think if you can enter into more of a higher price point market, and the other benefit to this obviously, which is just quite, I guess I don't know if people think about it all the time, but it's like the people who have the money are generally the ones that will continue to buy even in
Yes.
poor economic times. And so you're just like you're protecting yourself as much as possible by
Yes. By
thinking,
actually doing
how
that.
can I, right? You're like, I don't want to target every single person. I want to target a small pocket of the market. I want to create something amazing for them. I want to charge a lot of money for it because it means I can profit and reinvest into my company, provide value. I'm very, very supportive of that. I think that's probably the best way to do it.
And and
Absolutely.
and and and, and also I think that just on this point, let's say I'm selling a product. Let's say I'll take the makeup brush as an example, and
Sure.
you're like, hey, this product, we can sell it for 20. We can sell it as a luxury item for, let's say, $100. Your goal probably would be, how can I target that $100 audience, even
Mm,
if it's like it's gonna be, if I was to take this product and show it to a person that normally would buy it for 20, like, hey, this is crazy. I'm still gonna target that audience that's more, I would say, like kind of higher end, because that's gonna
yep.
do exactly what you mentioned. It's an audience that could give like pretty much more money to me as like a business owner if I was to advertise other
Correct.
products. So my list is going to be much, much more higher quality, and I can scale in the future with just not paid ads. I can also leverage email marketing, which we're going to talk about probably in another episode, because I think it's a
Correct.
massive leverage in the business. So that's my
Correct.
view on even if you have a product where technically it's like viewed as a cheap product, you can actually make it a luxury item. And you can
Correct.
really or push it on the higher end, make it higher quality. And that's the goal here in the program. There are a lot of cases where we looked at a product and like, hey, let's adapt it to that avatar that's a little bit more with a say higher income, and
Mm.
make sure that there is a margin there, there's a quality there, and that's what we
Yep.
push in the program as you're positioning in the market by default.
And the other part to this as well that I think is important is that, like, say for example, people are listening to this and they're like, okay, cool, like that sounds fantastic, epic. I'm going to take my crummy design website and push it into luxury markets and charge very expensive prices. Like there needs to be it needs to match, right? You can't, like, go and charge 4 times the price and then have a really crummy landing page, really ordinary images. And so, like, it's very important that there's congruence there. The example that comes to mind, and I purchased one of her paintings recently, one of our clients, Nicole, yeah, Nikki. And
Yes, Nikki.
yeah, amazing. So I was actually, it was very interesting because I was speaking to her this morning about this amazing artwork. She sells incredible artwork. And I was looking at her Instagram and I saw this painting and I was like, wow, this is really nice. I could really see where that would go on my wall. This is fantastic. And I was like, and then I went through to her website and I'm like having a look and browsing at the particular designs, the framing, all that type of stuff. And because of the price point of the product being, depending on the size, obviously it changes the pricing. If you have, like, smaller ones, it's a lot more cost efficient. You get the bigger ones that are like 1 meter by 1.8 meters, it's like nearly $2,000, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, and I'm like, as the consumer looking to purchase like a $1,200 piece of art, I'm like, so I would love to have some additional, like, support, reassurance, communication, chat box, something there to help me to validate my decision, right? It's like those are the types of things that you need to think about again when you're starting to charge more, is like, how can I back this up and actually validate what people are thinking? You might have got them to the website, they're like, this is amazing, but you really need to make sure, if this is kind of looping back a little bit into what we discussed in the, conversion rate optimization, increasing that. But it's like, when you're in that marketplace charging to customers that are more sophisticated, you have to justify what you're actually selling from a value proposition perspective. Yeah.
Absolutely. And keep in mind, in every business, if I was looking at really the value, just this is really like looking at what are the two elements in every, like not just ecom, in any business, price is one of them. The other one is
Mm,
people, like are behind the brand or
correct.
the business overall. But I would say pricing is so strong because it's pretty much like your power in the market. Like if you have a lower price, you
Correct.
have a lower power. Like that's by default how I think about it. Now, as you mentioned, the goal is not to just jump and just double the price. I'm like, hey, this is a goal, it's a strategy that we recommended. Not really. You need to adapt, as you mentioned, the offer, adapt everything, and on the website, your content, the brand itself.
Correct.
So it's not just one element. It's all what you worked on should be displayed in a certain way to convert a higher price and actually
Correct.
target that audience.
Hmm. Let's talk a little bit about like upsells or post-purchase activity, things that you can kind of design into the back end or the front end. I guess you could do a pre-purchase or post-purchase. Let's talk about this first things first. What is that? What in your perspective, Hammond? What's a pre-purchase, post-purchase upsell? How does that work? Let's just explain that in really basic terms first, and then we'll dive into it.
Absolutely. So in terms of your like if I was to look at any funnel, when I say funnel, just like your website and kind of the behavior of someone going from the click to the conversion,
Hmm.
let's say when they click on an add to cart, you can actually show them at that moment. Let's say if I was to look at a defining moment, which is a purchase,
Mm,
anything before, I would call it a pre-purchase. Pre means just before. Post would be after. So anything after the purchase, I would consider this a post-purchase. So technically, it's just a defining moment, like looking at the purchase, and anything before that we do in terms of offer or adding something there in terms of you're displaying either the same product or another option for them. We're going to call this as kind of a pre-purchase upsell. And an upsell would be you trying to add in something on top of what you're offering initially that they saw. So let's say
right.
they click on the add to cart, they see another item that would just pop at $5 more. That's an upsell. You're trying to up like a little bit your offer. And that's
Right.
kind of the upsell and the post-purchase slash pre-purchase. Now,
Hmm.
my view on this particularly, you can if you have a one product store, so we need to look at first what you have. If you have a one product store, so your store is kind of operating with one product, you can
Yep.
upsell the same product, which I know is
Mm,
might be surprising. Like, why would people buy the same product
mm,
twice? Maybe different colors. Maybe they
mm.
want to buy more of the same product, like they just it's a consumable. Maybe they want to gift someone. So you
Yeah.
can always position even one product multiple time in your funnel. And I would say if
Mm,
you have one product, so just if I was to run the business with one product, I would focus more on variant and I will do it in the post purchase. So after they buy, so that
yes.
I can offer them more option for gifting or things like that. So that's my positioning in terms of like pre-purchase, like what is pre-purchase, what is post-purchase. And if you
Got
have
it.
multiple products, you can actually position something before. Now that's
Yeah.
the pre-purchase, post-purchase
Got it.
structure.
Yeah, very much the same as well in terms of, I guess, the post purchase. Like, I think about Basu and what we've done there with the post purchase, and uh, all we've done there is sell, and it's very interesting, and it doesn't surprise me anymore. But I think it's quite interesting behavior that, for example, people will come through and they'll buy like they might buy like 2 7 packs of these cloths, right? And so that's 14 cloths that they've purchased. And then what they'll do then is they'll go into the post purchase and they'll get sold more of the same product. And I think it's like 25 to 30% of people say yes, and they purchase more. So these people are buying like 30 cloths, right? And it's it's remarkable behavior. But I think it's a great place to start for anybody who's looking to introduce some form of upsell or some kind of like post-purchase activity, is just give the prospect more of what they've already purchased. Give that customer the same thing again at a discounted price. There's a company that does this really, really well. They're called Homey, HOMMEY.com. They're like a cushions and kind of homewares company in Australia. My wife was buying some cushions some time ago. I remember she was going through the funnel, she purchased them, and it was like first, immediate kind of upsell was more of the same product at like a significant discount, two more of them at a significant discount. No to that one. More of the same product again at an even bigger discount where you're like, how could I say no to this? And you just like
Yeah.
opt to say yes, so it's like so effective in terms of really, again, this is what we were saying before in terms of we've squeezed the ads, we've squeezed the conversion rate, we've squeezed the average order value, and then we're like we've squeezed the average order value from a price perspective on page. Now we're going off page into the back end a little bit more. How can we then do the same thing and just create that same level of efficiency in terms of the post purchase? That's how I think about it. Yeah.
Yes, and also you have like other things such as you can upsell like digital products. Like you can do a lot of
Yes.
things. It's not just like physical products. So what is your view on the digital product and insurance and things like that?
Yeah, well, I think that the digital products are excellent because it kind of creates. I like to think of the digital products as almost like I call it like fusion e-commerce, where it's kind of fusion of digital, which typically has like higher margins, and then the actual tangible product, which people like to receive in the mail because they can touch it and they can feel it. Like this is fantastic. I get to have my dream outcome. And then I think the cool thing about the digital aspect is it also offsets some of the delay, like the time delay. So say, for example, you immediately upon completion of purchase get the digital copy. Maybe it's an audio-based thing, maybe it's an ebook type thing, something of value. What you're doing is you're shortening the time that people need to wait between them outlaying their cash and them actually starting to receive something. Right. So it's like you're creating more brand equity and you're creating more kind of like customer loyalty just through the fact of you being able to shorten that value cycle of them purchasing something, and you've got the product coming 4, 5, 6 days later. In the meantime, they've already consumed the ebook, they've already consumed the mini series, whatever it might be, and they're like, this is fantastic. Oh, I'm so excited to receive the product. This is really, really valuable. And they're almost like, I've received so much value already from this. Geez, I'd be stoked if I paid 2 times for this thing. And that's where you really start to get customers for life when you're able to
Yes,
shorten that value cycle, I believe. Yeah. What's your
absolutely.
perspective on the digital side of things?
So the digital thing, you can use it just as a way to increase your conversion rate. So pretty much you're adding it as a $0, just, it's
Mm,
as an offer to push the conversion rate. And what I've seen in the past, if you have a product where you have like a good, I would say like a digital product, like just almost like a program, you can actually
mhm,
sell it and position this as a way to increase your margins. So for me, it's like it can go both ways. I would think about it as a way to increase the conversion rate while keeping it at $0, or I would focus on maybe positioning this as a whole other program on the side. So it's really depend
mm.
on I would say how we're like the value of the program pretty much.
Yeah, correct, correct. What's your thoughts on bundles and introducing bundles? Because obviously, like I look at bundles as a pretty powerful way to drive and increase the average order value. How have you seen bundles being used, or if they're effective? If effective, what timings do you use them? How does it look?
So bundles, it's really depend on the type of product. So if you have a product where people normally would purchase more than one, bundles are so powerful because you can actually play on, I would say, the perceived value of more and or even sell
Mm,
more supplies. And that would actually increase your margins by default because you're selling more. So I would play on the bundles if I see that people normally would buy more than one or it's a product that people consume. Those are really, I would say, two situations where you have a strong way to position a bundle. So it's really based on that. If I was looking at the volume pretty much. Now, if you have complementary products, so for example, you have a product where it can be sold in a like a package, or let's say it's a
mm,
skincare product where you have tons of products you can combine together, then bundling also would make sense. So it's really based on the product. I've seen cases where if I was to sell one item, my margin would be very low. So I'm kind of looking at, hey, let's bundle things, add them together so that we can price higher. So it's also a way to price higher technically by, showing the value that you have more value and then you can price higher. It's
mm,
coming back to the perceived value.
mm. I think the thing that I saw work really well with Oz Fishing particularly is we did like family based bundles, and I believe we did like father and son based bundles where they could come and like select like one adult shirt and up to like 2 or 3 children's shirts count. I think the cool thing that I like about bundles when using them to increase average order value is it obviously helps you to kind of like create more value per order, but I think the other benefit of it as well is it's a little bit more like unique in the market. Say, for example, you actually advertise like that bundle being the offer. It's like as opposed to just like one standalone product, like the bundle, the different features, and people think. I know Hormozy talks about this a lot. Like, so say for example, I'm going to go for a run this afternoon, and I followed the exact kind of like pathway, if you recall, that he talks about in his videos, where he's like, when someone goes and decides to go running, and say, for example, they're like, right, I'm going to get the running shoes. They don't just buy the running shoes, and I didn't just buy the running shoes either. I got the running shoes, and then I was like, okay, well, I need those big glasses so I look like a professional, right? The shiny glasses, and then I need like a running cap because I don't want to get sunburnt. Okay, and then I need like different running shorts because like I want to be able to, feel cool in my legs when they're running. And so like all of a sudden, right, I've created all of this additional purchasing power, and the shop that I purchased the shoes from didn't capture all that extra value. And so, like, say, for example, there was a bundle or there was a solution there that was presented in a very unique way. It's like the Kickstarter to your running journey. We cover this, and it's only X price. It's like, that's an immediately different solution to anything else. And it's like, I don't want to go to 4, 5, 6 different shops. I don't want to go and like click on 6 different websites and buy the product. Just give me the whole thing, get it all to me in a really quick time frame, and I'll
Uh,
happily pay extra. So that's where I think the value comes into the equation with the bundle side of things.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes also the value comes from how these products are, working between like if I was to, for example, looking to run, that can be all the product can be contributing to the outcome. So you're gonna get there faster if I was actually to have something that's adapted. So let's say the shoes,
Correct.
everything
Correct.
is kind of, adapted to a product wise, when you're buying them versus, oh, I need to buy from this place, and this place, and kind of I have to adapt to the series of product that I'm buying. So sometimes adapting again, this would probably apply more to beauty, where you don't want to mix things. It's like we're going to provide everything, and you can use this, let's say, for the morning, this one for the evening, and so on. So it's really adapting also based on like looking at that outcome, like what's the desired outcome. You, let's say, looking better, your skin is better, then having all the product together, using all of the series of things that we built would give you more value, and that would make sense
Correct.
for the customer. So that's where I would say bundling is so powerful.
And I think the best way to think about the bundling aspect, because I don't think it's necessarily something that people should do when they start straight away. I think it's best done if there's kind of like purchasing behavior or data that you have based on products that get sold over historical, periods of time, maybe 1 quarter, 2 quarters, 1 year, for example. And you can see, interesting. So people seem to buy these 3 products together. Interesting. So people tend to buy this and that together. And so you can naturally start to see, what that looks like. I think that's very, very helpful in terms of analyzing that purchasing behavior and then using that to create the bundles. And then the other way that I like to do it is also thinking about, okay, so me going running, for example, I wear the shoes when I go running. Okay, great. So what do I do after running? Well, usually I have like a foam roller and I roll my legs out. And so it's like, well, that's the next thing that I do. And so what do I do before I go running? Well, usually I get dressed to go running, right? I put on the shorts, put on the hat, put on the glasses, put the special, zinc on my face. All those things happen before, right? And then I've got the shoes that happen during. And then during, I probably need like a special headphones, something like, there's all these things. So it's like you've got your customer journey right now that you are servicing, and then it's like what happens before, and then what happens after,
After.
and how can you like
Yes.
capture more of that in your experience? Yeah.
Yes. It's really powerful, like what you just shared here. It's like really almost like it's like a hack to
Yeah.
bundle things because you're thinking about the whole experience versus just that product, what one moment, right? It's really, I think the view on it is if you're looking at your customer from a perspective of value, you want to give them like really a valuable product, like really looking at that from that angle, this is the best strategy, like mapping out what they
Mm,
do and providing things that are valuable to that avatar. So that's going to be, I think, a very powerful way to bundle, but also to really introduce new products like completely in your, under your brand. So that's going to be another way to kind of
agreed.
expand your products.
Agreed. Yeah, definitely, definitely. The last point that I've got here, I mean, we did say that we'll go into email marketing afterwards. Are there any other things, Hammond, in terms of, so we kind of went through and discussed, I guess, like the price, my perspective, like ratchet that price up as much as you can possible until you start to freeze over and your conversion rate drops back down again, and then probably, just adjust that price to find the sweet spot. My next step there was really looking at the sales history of products and then being able to implement or add, certain kind of like pairings of those products in your creatives in the front end, right through to some of the pairings of them. The other thing which we didn't mention, and I think this is really crucially important, this is probably a little bit more of an extension maybe of conversion rate optimization, but I think it's also relevant as well, is even just down to, for example, like just the positioning of certain products on your website and whereabouts on the website. So it's like if you've got one ad that showcases a particular product that's your hero product is working well, you probably want to make it as easily available. If you're sending people to collections, if you're sending people to pages where they need to scroll, we did talk about this a lot, but just like keep the main thing at the front and center so it can just show people like, okay, we've shown a bundle in the ad of, two shirts and a pair of shorts for, the dad and the son. Fantastic. As soon as they land on that page, or whether it's a collection page or a product page, it's like you want to see the same thing and you want to just go through that same experience. I think that's something that is really, really kind of important as well. Even before you go into that kind of one-click upsell or back end kind of upsell process. So any last things that you think, Hammond, on this topic here in terms of increasing the average order value overall from your experience?
So yeah, so as we mentioned, like you need to look at increasing your price. Your goal is to increase your price by default. So we're always seeking more margins, higher prices. Now,
Mm,
what you mentioned is really powerful. In actually some landing page, we have the like three options. Let's say we're bundling, we have one, you can buy one, you can buy two, and we have always like a in the middle, you have like that recommended option, right? So that's the
yes.
one way to really center and like, hey, this is what we recommend, this is what the people would buy normally. And that's a way to also push, let's say a bundle of if I was thinking about a bundle, you can do either one, sorry, you can do two, three, four, five, like there's always like a multiple options. So I
Mm,
think playing on the positioning would be strong in terms of this is the recommended one, this is what people would normally
yes.
go with, and that's normally what you adapt to of looking at your options and pricing. So yeah, very, very, very strong, I think element leveraging the price. So my view on this is like probably you should focus on initially, as you mentioned, like optimizing things and then tackling
Mm.
either the pre-purchase, post-purchase to scale more in terms of like new product bundles and so on. So that's going to be, I think, my strategy overall.
What are the tools that you've used in terms of post-purchase, pre-purchase, upsells? We'll start there, and then maybe we can discuss any kind of like apps or tools that you might have seen some success with in terms of bundling as well.
Okay, so I'm really like a big fan of one-click upsell. I've been
Yeah.
really recommending it all the time because it's actually you can see in one-click upsell the option of the post-purchase, pre-purchase. So they're doing the same thing. They're showing you that defining
Mm,
moment, and you can add both pre-purchase and post-purchase. So one-click upsell is a great app in my opinion for that.
mm.
There are some other apps if you guys are, let's say, running with a personalized, like you want to do some personalizations and things like that. I think Candy Rack is another app that's really good for that.
Yes.
But I would really encourage people to look at one-click upsell because that's the main one that I use in general. So that's probably my recommended app
I
in short.
agree. Yeah, that's exactly the same. I think that yeah, I'm very much a fan of one click upsell. The other one that I saw some okay success with which is more it's more in the cart actually. It kind of like gives you special offers and it has little discounts and stuff happening in the cart. Is that I think it's Monster Upsell or
Yes,
Monster
Monster.
something like
Yes,
that. It's called as
yes.
well. Yeah,
Monster app.
I thought
Yes.
that was okay, but definitely one click upsell I think has much better analytics as well, so you can see a lot more data in terms of what's happening. And then you can also like, make certain adjustments based on, again, like you said, the pre-purchase or the post-purchase. So
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. I
really,
think we
really
should do
good
an
stuff.
episode just tackling apps. Like, what are the apps that we're using? I think it's going to be great. Like,
Agreed.
just tackling the top five apps and how you can leverage them.
Agreed. Agreed. Definitely. So I think let's probably cut it here in terms of the main things. Just in recap, I guess from my perspective and the way that I see this, it's like we've got to this stage right now where you've done the ads, and I'll say this again and again. You've done the ads, you've done the conversion rate, you've started to push that up, you've got good numbers coming through. I would ratchet the price back up until you start to see a drop. Once you've found that drop, soften it back a little bit. Once you've found that sweet spot on the price, then work on the post-purchase in terms of like you've got a post-purchase upsell, sell more of the same thing to them, right? And you can afford to discount at that same product because you're not paying acquisition. So you can discount 30%, sometimes 40% and still be making healthy margins. Once you've
Yes.
exhausted that, then I'd be looking at like bundles. Okay, great. What are people buying together? How can we kind of like package all that up together and then push that, into their faces to give them, again, like similar to what I mentioned, that full end-to-end experience where I've got the shoes, I've got the short, I've got the hat, I've got the glasses, I've got the sunscreen, I've got the roller for my legs. The whole thing's covered. Thanks so much. And you're going to pay 2 or 3 times what you would pay in one purchase. And then I know next week we said we will cover in full detail email marketing, which I'm super excited to cover because I think this is something that I always find that people ignore, which is
Yes.
really, really
It's like we don't want to do email
Dangerous.
marketing, just want to do the ads, right? But email
It's
marketing is so
dangerous.
powerful.
It's so dangerous. I see it all the time where people are like, oh yeah, I don't really send emails. I don't, yeah, I know that I need to do emails is
Yes,
usually what
but
comes.
it's not
Oh
the
yeah,
priority.
it's always just something in the background. Oh, I don't really send them too much, and it's like I really want to give some context, some structure, and also some frameworks that people can use to send better emails, more frequency, more cadence, more systems. So I'd like to unpack that with you, Hammond, next week on the podcast and go into that.
Absolutely, very excited for that. I think it's going to be a great episode tackling also a little bit AI and how you can leverage that because a lot of you actually have been introducing more and more automation. So yeah,
Yes.
it's going to be a very exciting episode.
Absolutely. Any final points that you think people need to know in terms of the average order value or what we've discussed here today?
Yes. So again, to sum up, you need to increase your prices. Like that's going to be like your goal is to not stay within that normal range. You need to always look at pushing more, but do that with more value. So we need to have a higher perceived value. Another
Mm,
thing is you need to optimize your pre-purchase, post-purchase. That's by default something that you should look at. I will give you guys just before kind of ending the episode here some numbers. You should have a higher than 20% take rate in general for both
mm,
pre and post-purchase. Like if you have less than 20% take rate, then by default you should optimize more, do A/B testings. That's going to be my view on it. You can sell the same product, few colors, variations, sizes. You can also sell other products that are cheaper, and that's another positioning. So that's kind of my view on the increasing your AOV and specifically the 20% take rate. If you have less than that, then you should optimize more. And think about this. If your
agreed.
product margins are 50,
Agreed.
1 out of 5 would take this. You have pretty much increased like your margins by $20, and that's pretty good. So say
Mm,
really looking at the numbers. Sorry, let's say $100 margin, then 1 out of 5, then you can really push like higher into let's say
mm,
margins overall. So yeah,
mm. Very good. Very, very good. Guys, I hope you got some value from this episode. I hope you can use some of these, structures and strategies and frameworks and ways of thinking in terms of creating more profit in your business. And look, if you do want to reach out and ask us a particular question that we can cover here in the podcast, feel free to do that. If you're listening to this and maybe you have an e-commerce business that you maybe wanted to get some help with as well, what I may do is just put some notes into the show notes below this episode where you can actually discover a little bit more about what we do and how we do certain things. And maybe you might be able to get a little bit more involvement in terms of what we do on the Ecom Capital community side of things and maybe get some help with growing your business. But thank you so much for being part of this episode. And thank you so much for being part of this podcast overall, Hammond. Always great to speak to you and pull
soon
things apart, all things strategy and e-commerce. And I'm,
looking
I'm
forward.
pumped for email marketing next week.
Yes, excited for next week email marketing.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Thanks so much.
Right.
I'll see you soon, Hammond.
See you soon.